Thank you so much. And yes, that was a beautiful introduction, Wendy. Thank you for reading that. What it doesn't say is, what brought me into expressive arts and trauma healing and embodiment work. And part of why I do that is because I am a Korean adoptee, and I was surrendered at birth, and I was flown from Busan, South Korea, to Detroit, Michigan when I was about 3 months old. And while I was in Korea, I was in foster care. And even though I grew up in a very loving home with wonderful supportive parents who really encouraged me to be myself and to really pursue my interests and get to know my likes and dislikes, when I got out of my household and was off on my own in college, I felt very depressed. I was only about an hour and a half from my hometown, but I found that I couldn't get out of bed, and the world just felt very gray, and like it wasn't full of color or vibrancy. And I had this picture, a poster of Picasso's Guernica hanging over my bed, and my sword collection, and I would just stare at that and sort of the pieces of decapitated animals and war, in the Spanish War, and then think about my samurai swords and how when you unsheath the sword, you can see it glisten, and how the blade is just so. And when I saw those pieces and the beauty and thought of the power in unsheathing the sword, I was able to get out of bed and to find beauty and hope in the world in these small moments. But again, when I got out of academia, many, many years later, because I got 2 MFAs in creative writing, and I took a much longer time to get through college because of some racist experiences and trauma. So I was about 29 when I finally got out of academia and started dating and moved from all of the stuff that you're supposed to do as a teenager, dating narcissists and losing yourself and losing my voice. I forgot who I was in these relationships. And it wasn't until I started doing conscious dance and really started to feel my body for the first time that I realized how impacted I had been from that wound of losing my mother at birth, and how easily I could fall into just wanting to be what these older women wanted me to be so that I could be loved. So when I was able to slowly start feeling my body, my feet and my hips and my hands and my shoulders and my spine, I was finally able to unwind and unravel a lot of those wounds and stories through different movements, through pounding the floor, through actually playing with unsheathing and dancing with my swords, through wings that showed me the transformation and sort of the power that we have and the sensuality we have, especially as women. And a lot of the symbols I still wear, finally coming into my heart and being able to feel emotions and know what they were, rather than just kind of disconnecting and dissociating. And one of the biggest symbols in my life is the bowler hat, which came from the character of Sabina in Milan Kundera's novel, which is about refugees of the Prague Spring and how they were displaced from their home through war and had to go to other countries and figure out how to find love and reconnect and still be who they are as artists and as thinkers in a place that was not living. So it was a powerful story for me, and I used those symbols in ways that could connect me again to my own voice and to my own story and come into my full self-expression. So that is why I offer what I do and do expressive arts, particularly focused on embodiment, so that people who are also very dissociated or confused or have lost aspects of themselves can also find their voice and come home to themselves, and really do it through powerful symbols and ways that they can connect to those stories. Another piece of clothing that I'm wearing is this shirt that used to belong to Andrea Devoe that I got at Susanna Graz's beautiful sale for her. And I thought, what a great way to sort of honor this talk, where I have stepped in as the speaker coordinator and coach for her. And it still smells like her. I've washed it 5 times. So there is a quote that I do have to read because I didn't memorize it, but about the power of artifacts to tell stories. It says, whatever detritus we leave after ourselves, story is what makes it valuable. Without story, the artifacts of ordinary lives quickly lose significance and preciousness. And that's by Christina Baldwin in a book called Story Catcher, Making Sense of Our Lives Through the Power and Practice of Story. And some of the reasons that we find the movement in talks nowadays to transformational storytelling is because it really is the way that we originally communicate, through language, through meaning making, through symbols that we then create a story around to communicate something to each other with vulnerability. And when you get up and speak and are vulnerable first, your audience can then trust you and connect with you, and therefore they can listen with openness, and they're able to really hear more of what you're saying. The kind of the old way of beginning a talk was with asking a question and getting them to respond or raise their hand, which can also be good, but we found now in our trauma-informed world that it can also put people at dis-ease and unsettle them, because it's asking them to be vulnerable first without knowing who you are, without establishing that trust, or without you being vulnerable. So if you begin a talk with vulnerability, and there's no better way of doing that than sharing stories about who you are and why you're doing what you're doing or saying what you're saying, and the impact that that's having, then you can already start to begin to create that trust and make people feel comfortable. And part of why I do trauma-informed speaking is because it does allow the audience to feel more at ease, to feel more open, and to give the authority back to them. There are many ways that we use the word trauma-informed nowadays. And what I use in my business, and what I find to be sort of the best definition of trauma-informed is by making sure that the audience or the client or the person, on the receiving end of your communication feels like they're always at choice. Like they have options available to them. So if you're teaching or providing something that doesn't necessarily fit with who they are, they know that they can say, oh no, that's not for me. I need to do it a different way. That breathing exercise is triggering me. I have to do something else. So it gives them the choice, and it validates their experience. It makes them the expert rather than you being the expert that you are, but allowing them to also be an expert in their own way and have that individual authority. And it does it in a compassionate way. So, if there's language, I don't believe in cancel culture at all. But if you know that people find certain words or certain, phrases will not be, in a place that they can really hear you, where you're coming from. Changing your language and being adaptable to what actually does work for them is not going to really trigger them. So then again, they can have that openness, and they know that you're respecting and understanding where they come from. Another reason that stories are so powerful is because they establish a deeper connection. When you've also had an experience with depression, or with feeling disconnected from your body, or being in emotionally or physically abusive relationships, then you feel more connected to somebody who's sharing that. You have that established lived experience that you can draw from, and also, again, are much more open to what they're saying or to feeling like you have that connection or, that openness to really respond to what they're saying or what they're offering. So, to kind of help you connect to maybe what transformational stories you have for your business and in your life, one of the ways to think of the transformational story that my teacher, Rachel Jane Cooper, uses is if you think about where you started. For instance, when I said, when I was in college, the world was gray, it wasn't vibrant, I couldn't get out of bed. Think about where your ideal client or where your audience, if you're giving a talk, may be starting from or what they're experiencing and how that was for you. Like really put yourself back in that place. And then think about where you are now. How empowered you are, how much you've changed, how you have your butterfly wings or your bowler hat or your necklace or whatever it is. And think about what bridges those two lines. The before or the NAB after. What was that connection for you? What was that powerful shift? So to help you kind of connect with that, I have an exercise that I love to do that you can either do seated or standing, whichever is comfortable for you. And it helps if you close your eyes, but again, that is comfortable. You can keep them open. It's about what feels best for you or as you kind of receive information. And so you can just begin, and then really just feel whether you're seated or standing to, where do you feel if you play around with kind of where you are in the back body or where you are in the body, where you want to balance your weight so that you feel most centered and sort of yourself. And once you're there, just really breathe into that. Breathe into that space, wherever it is for you. And you can put your hand there so that you can actually feel the rhythm of your breath. And just know that that is your internal rhythm. That is your body's way of speaking, your body's voice. And if it feels comfortable for you, you can start to sort of make small circles with your hips and your chin to begin to get some of the creative life energy to that space. And you can again play with the rhythm if it needs to be slow or if it needs to be faster, if it needs to be larger or smaller. And you can even go the other direction and see if that feels more comfortable or not. Many people have one direction that they like to. And this you're just playing again with your own rhythm, with your own voice. If there were any colors or shapes or symbols or words that come, just keep them in mind and notice them for you. And then you can just sort of offer them to that space inside so that they take shape or change, or they might just stay the same. Again, just noticing what is happening for you. And then if you bring in sort of an intention, it could be transformation, it could be whatever the theme of the story that you want to tell is, and see if that shifts or changes some of the words or the colors or the shapes. And when you're ready, you can sort of stop moving, and again, just notice if anything's different in your body or with what you're imagining. And you can just sort of offer that imagine that there's a circle or a rose enclosing you at whatever distance is comfortable from your body, and just offer it to that space so that it's there kind of outside you. And then you can bring in some of those shapes or words back into that space that felt like your center. And see if they feel aligned or feel right for you. And if not, you can toss them back out. And if they do, again, just kind of let them be. When you're ready, you can just offer them into the center of the room, this circle that we've made, and give them back to the earth, the air, for now. Thank you. And you can do that exercise as many times as you want as you create your transformational strategy. And as the speaker coach and coordinator, when I give you your free coaching session, some people need to. Okay. I can also guide you through that process as you create your story. So this is part of what I love to do in my work, is really helping people embody and create new sacred stories for themselves that really are in alignment with how they think, with how they feel, and with what they're imagining for their own intentions. These business profile stories that are written by someone else that have me and Homa in them, and I have many more, so please take them on the tables, and if you want some, I have more in my bag.
Thank you. And questions are brilliant and
Any questions or comments?
That's awesome.
That was great.
Inspirational. Thank you.
Kelsay, can you send us some prompts or put it on the Facebook page? Like, you did all that? I have no idea. I'm not going to remember how to do that.
Yes, I had actually created a PDF with a nice little branded illustration and QR code. However, my printer died, and I cannot set up the new fancy printer that our Mac therapist suggested for me. So I was not able to print anything.
Wow! Would you put it on Facebook?
I will upload it and link it on the Facebook page.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
I just really loved that. I don't really know that much about, kind of the trauma-informed perspective. I work in a community that does have a lot of trauma, and I really appreciate that perspective of putting your self out there really helps other people feel at ease. And that was definitely a shift that I was able to make and hopefully can make in the work that I do. So thank you.
I'll just add to that I love how you demonstrated giving the client the power to make it work for us.
Yes.
I want to thank you for, in such a short time, embodying your work and demonstrating it and sharing it with us in a way that we got to feel it and really get it. Really beautiful. Yeah, thank you. That was great.